We're looking at the 2023 NFL Hall of Fame class. Didn't get to obviously see all of these players or coaches. In this case, we have one coach live or in action. But let's go through them and see what they contributed to the league, what kind of career they've had briefly. So it'll just be rapid fire here. Rondé Barber was able to see just about all of his career. He played from 97 to 2012 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not what you'd call a shutdown corner, but a player, in my mind, it was time to get him in. Warren Sapp, Derrick Brooks, John Lynch, Rondé Barber, four Hall of Famers on that Buccaneers defense. Of course, the year they broke through was 2002, where they won the Super Bowl, but they were a good defense for several years. Very interesting stat line: 47 career interceptions, 28 career sacks, 15 forced fumbles. That tells you he is around the ball and he is making an impact. He compiled very impressive stats. Maybe not a shutdown corner, but an excellent corner in his time, and worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. Next up, Don Coryell, who was an NFL head coach with the St. Louis Cardinals from 73 to 77, and then with the San Diego Chargers, I wish they were still in San Diego, from 78 to 80 through 86. And he was a coach that definitely advanced the passing game, who really was ahead of his time with attacking down the field as often as he did. When we're looking at the Chargers, Dan Fouts. Dan Fouts is, I feel, underrated. He didn't win a Super Bowl, but he was one of those quarterbacks who, just imagine if he played now. I mean, you'd be lighting it up. And this is one of the minds that changed the NFL to more of the modern passing game. He was known as Air Coryell. Next up, Chuck Howley, Dallas Cowboys linebacker. He played from 58 through 73, all but 2 years with the Cowboys. And he has a very interesting accomplishment where he won a Super Bowl MVP in a losing effort. It was against the Colts in the 1970 Super Bowl. That would be Super Bowl V, where he had 2 interceptions and also a forced fumble. And he won the MVP even in a losing effort. That wasn't it. I mean, he had a fine career. And he was a player that, talk about overdue. They get him in. He's 87 years old. It should have been in years ago. Look at his career accomplishments. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. 25 career interceptions. Sacks aren't exactly recorded as they are today, but put him down for 26 career sacks. So an excellent player, also worthy. Then you got Joe Klecko. So Joe Klecko, I didn't get to see any of his career. I was too young. He played from 77 to 88, and he's known for being a member of the New York Sack Exchange. And he played on different places on the defensive line. He could play end, he could play tackle. And to be honest, I wasn't very familiar with him, but when Anthony Munoz says you should be in the Hall of Fame, I would say that's good enough for me. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler. He had a 20 and a half sack season in 1981, which was the highlight season of his career. Darrelle Revis. You want to talk about a cornerback and a shutdown a cornerback. This is your guy. Revis Island. You could put him on a receiver and he would just erase them. He really was as good as it gets. He wasn't, I'm saying, the best corner ever, but in his prime, if you're just taking those prime seasons, he had 7 Pro Bowls, 4 All-Pros. I don't know how you could be much better than he was. He didn't rack up a lot of interceptions. Why? Because they just wouldn't throw in his direction. He was that good. Easy selection. Ken Riley, who played his entire career with the Cincinnati Bengals. This was one that took too long for him to get in. When you have over 60 picks, that says something. You should be in the Hall of Fame if you have over 60 interceptions. He played cornerback for the Bengals. Long career, solid career. Somehow he didn't really make it to many Pro Bowls or All-Pros throughout his career. You look at this, actually only one All-Pro. He never actually went to the or was selected to the Pro Bowl one time, but he was an All-Pro, 15-year career. It's 65 picks. He was well overdue to get in. Then you got Joe Thomas, the tackle from the Cleveland Browns, and very easy selection. Considered by many to be one of the greatest offensive tackles of all time. The league's had some great offensive tackles. 10 Pro Bowls, 6 All-Pros. He started left tackle all 16 games for the Browns his rookie season. He actually was second in AP voting for Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was second to Adrian Peterson. That draft, the 2007 draft, was so loaded with guys like Revis, Peterson, Joe Thomas, Patrick Willis, who should get in. Great draft. It was a disappointing quarterback draft, but one of the best drafts in my life since following the draft. Here's an interesting stat, a great stat. He only allowed 30 sacks in his career. And remember what era he played in, as it's not quite what it was now with so many of these sack artists and specialists. But the position became far more athletic during his career. He was actually the first offensive lineman in NFL history to be named to the Pro Bowl in each of his first 10 seasons. Zach Thomas. This one, too, some people feel Zach Thomas wasn't quite a Hall of Famer. I say he's a Hall of Famer. He was a complete player, undersized at middle linebacker, but he got the job done. 5'11", 228. Another player, he had a long career, but it's not just about longevity. You always have to say, well, is it about their peak or is it about longevity? Well, he was very good in his prime, and he had at the same time a successful long career. He amassed over 1,700 tackles, 20 and a half sacks, 17 interceptions, 16 forced fumbles. I mean, very well-rounded player and worthy of being in the Hall. And I'll say about this whole class, I don't feel like there's anyone that shouldn't be in. I feel like they've gotten a little too loose in the NFL in recent years. This is a good list. And we finish up with DeMarcus Ware. I feel many times Dallas Cowboys in the recent past have been overhyped, overrated. Not DeMarcus Ware. 9-time Pro Bowler. He had 138 and a half career sacks, 35 forced fumbles. He had a great career in Dallas, where he was one of the premier pass rushers in the league. But then he finished his career in Denver, where he was playing opposite side of Von Miller, which was one of the great pairings of all time when you're just thinking about greatest pass rushers. Even though he wasn't what he was, but he remained, even near the end of his career, a very good player. Best career year was in 2008, where he had 20 sacks. Didn't win a Defensive Player of the Year, but came close. He was second in voting that year. But this one was just a touchdown. Easy choice. One of the great Cowboys of all time. I don't think he's thought of it in that way, but he really is. He had, in just 9 years, he had 117 sacks. Oh, this is a good Hall of Fame class. I'm glad to see some of these guys get in, especially Zach Thomas. Ken Riley, it's too bad he didn't get in sooner. Chuck Howley, 87 years old. It's nice they got him in. And Rondé Barber. And with the NFL Hall of Fame, it's hard to select them because there are so many worthy players. I feel in baseball, they don't let enough in. They've loosened up a little bit in some years, and I feel like some of the guys shouldn't get in, but overall, they're almost too difficult and too strict. In the NFL, it's been almost too easy, but I have no complaints about this list. This is, while there's no, I would say, all-time greats, we're not talking about like a top 25 player here, but you do have like Darrelle Revis and Joe Thomas. These are elite players at their positions. These are top 10 players all time at their position, with Revis and Joe Thomas. And we actually have 2 Thomases, right? We have Joe and we have Zach. I wasn't even realizing that. And then the Hall of Fame games just coming up this week. So we're getting closer to some real football.